Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to do a deep dive into some fascinating accounts and evidence surrounding the JFK assassination.
Oh, fascinating case for
Yeah.
sure.
Specifically, we're tackling the enduring enigma of the man in the doorway at the Texas School Book Depository.
Oh, yeah.
And you've sent over some fascinating research and articles, and we're eager to kind of unravel this puzzle together.
Sounds good.
So our main source for this deep dive is an article aptly titled "Man in the Doorway: An Unbelievable Coincidence" from the Fourth Decade Journal.
Interesting.
And this is a publication dedicated entirely to JFK assassination research.
Wow.
And this particular article focuses on the photographic evidence and witness testimonies surrounding this mysterious figure. And we're going to try to kind of determine if this individual is Lee Harvey Oswald, or, as some believe, a coincidental look-alike named Billy Lovelady.
I think this is going to be really interesting for our listeners.
Yeah.
So the crux of this whole debate really revolves around the famous Alchin's photograph, taken just moments after the first shots were fired.
Yeah.
You know, as you likely know, it really captures that chaos and confusion at that moment.
Yeah.
But there in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository is a figure bearing a striking resemblance to Oswald.
And to make it even more interesting, both the Warren Commission and the House Select Committee on Assassinations conclude that this man in the doorway was, in fact, Billy Lovelady.
Right. Lovelady was one of Oswald's co-workers at the depository.
Okay.
And the official investigations kind of dismissed the resemblance as purely coincidental. But as we'll see, some of the evidence presents a pretty compelling counterargument.
So let's start with Billy Lovelady himself.
Okay.
In his initial statements, he claims that he was wearing a short-sleeved red and white striped shirt that day.
Uh-huh.
But photos taken by the FBI on that same day show Lovelady in a short-sleeved shirt while the man in the doorway is clearly wearing long sleeves.
That's one of the first inconsistencies that really casts doubt on the official narrative.
Kind of a big one, yeah.
Lovelady later tried to address this discrepancy by claiming he was actually wearing a long-sleeved plaid shirt that day.
Oh.
However, he never produced this shirt for the Warren Commission, which seems like a pretty crucial oversight.
You would think.
And to make things even more suspicious, he only showed this plaid shirt to a photographer 8 years later.
Wow. What do you make of that delayed reveal?
It definitely raises questions about his credibility. If he was telling the truth, why wait so long to produce this supposedly crucial piece of evidence?
Yeah, and we're not done with Lovelady yet. There's also the testimony of Wesley Frazier, another employee at the depository, who claims that Lovelady was sitting on the steps eating lunch, not standing in the doorway.
Wow.
So we have conflicting accounts not only about his clothing, but his whereabouts as well.
So you have to ask yourself, if Lovelady's story keeps changing and there's even physical evidence that contradicts his initial statements, how can we be certain he was the man in the doorway?
Yeah, it does seem like there's more to this story than a simple case of mistaken identity. And Lovelady's reluctance to be photographed and his eventual move to Denver to escape scrutiny only add fuel to the fire.
His behavior definitely doesn't lend itself to an easy dismissal of these doubts. It makes you wonder if perhaps there was something he was trying to avoid.
So speaking of scrutiny, let's shift our focus to Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay.
Where was he during all of this?
That's another piece of the puzzle that doesn't quite fit neatly into the official narrative. The article that you provided proposes an alternative theory that challenges the widely accepted belief that Oswald was on the 6th floor of the depository at the time of the shooting.
So if he wasn't on the 6th floor, where was he?
There are several witness accounts that place him elsewhere in the building.
Okay.
For instance, Carolyn Arnold, a secretary at the depository, claimed to have seen Oswald in the 2nd floor lunchroom just 15 minutes before the assassination.
Okay, so we have Oswald potentially on the 2nd floor, not the 6th. What are the implications of this? Could this mean he wasn't the shooter?
It's certainly a possibility worth considering. Oswald himself claimed he went down to the 1st floor lunchroom and then back up to the 2nd floor for a Coke. But even his own account doesn't place him on the 6th floor.
So it's fascinating how these seemingly minor details can have such profound implications. What are your thoughts on Oswald's potential presence on the 2nd floor? Does this strengthen the argument that he might have been a patsy, as some theories suggest?
If we entertain the possibility that Oswald was involved, but not as the lone gunman firing from the 6th floor, then his presence on the 2nd floor becomes incredibly significant.
That's a really thought-provoking point.
Yeah.
What if his role, whatever it may have been, played out on a different stage within the Texas School Book Depository building? It's like we're suddenly looking at a much broader crime scene, not just a single sniper's nest.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes this case so endlessly fascinating. The more you dig, the more you realize that the official narrative, while seemingly straightforward, might be obscuring a much more complex truth.
Like peeling back the layers of an onion only to find more layers underneath.
Exactly.
We've got conflicting accounts about Lovelady's whereabouts and attire, doubts about Oswald's location at the time of the shooting, and this entire man in the doorway mystery swirling around it all. And just to add another layer of intrigue, there's a recurring detail that we need to examine: the open shirt.
Oh, yeah. The open shirt. It might seem like a really trivial detail, but it pops up in several different witness accounts, almost like a hidden thread connecting seemingly disparate events.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this open shirt connection.
We already saw how the man in the doorway has his shirt wide open in that Ulchin's photo,
Right.
but it goes beyond that. Mrs. Randall, the witness who saw Oswald shortly before the assassination, specifically remembers him wearing a conspicuous T-shirt, indicating his shirt was unbuttoned.
So we have two instances of the open shirt already: the man in the doorway and Mrs. Randall's observation. Is there more?
Indeed. Officer Baker, who encountered Oswald shortly after the shooting, described him as wearing an open jacket. It's possible that he mistook Oswald's open shirt for a jacket, adding another instance to this peculiar pattern.
So that's three separate accounts mentioning an open shirt? What are the chances of that being a mere coincidence?
It does start to feel like more than just a random fashion choice,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't stop there. Two witnesses who saw a man fleeing the scene of Officer Tippett's murder, a crucial event linked to the assassination, also describe him as wearing an open shirt.
This is getting really interesting. It's as though this detail of the open shirt is deliberately woven into the fabric of the events surrounding the assassination. Is there any photographic evidence to support this as well?
As a matter of fact, there is. Photos taken at police headquarters show Oswald with his long-sleeved shirt hanging open, mirroring the man in the doorway's attire. It's a seemingly insignificant detail that takes on a whole new meaning when you consider all the other instances of the open shirt.
This is like a trail of breadcrumbs leading us down a very intriguing path. What are you implying here? Is this a string of unbelievable coincidences, or is something more deliberate at play?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And to further complicate this already perplexing scenario, there's another element we need to explore: the curious case of John Martin.
Okay, I'm all ears. Who is John Martin, and what makes him so curious?
Well, this is where things take another unexpected turn. John Martin is a man who filmed both the Man in the Doorway in Dealey Plaza and Lee Harvey Oswald distributing Fair Play for Cuba leaflets in New Orleans.
Wait, are we talking about the same John Martin filming both Oswald and the Man in the Doorway?
It certainly stretches the boundaries of plausibility, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It seems like an incredible coincidence.
Some researchers believe that these are two different John Martins,
Okay.
while others speculate that it's the same person.
Wow.
The article doesn't offer a definitive answer,
I see.
but it does raise a lot of questions.
So we're left wondering, do we have one John Martin with an uncanny knack for being in the right place at the right time? Or are we dealing with two separate individuals who just happen to share the same name and a connection to this case? What are your thoughts on this?
It's a fascinating dilemma. It's one of those details that makes this case so captivating.
Yeah.
It really makes you question what we can truly know for sure.
It's like every time we think we're getting close to a solid answer, we uncover another layer of complexity. We've examined the evidence surrounding the man in the doorway, and it seems like there's a compelling argument against the official explanation. Where do we go from here?
Well, let's consider this. What if the intense focus on the sixth-floor sniper's nest has been a distraction? What if we've been so fixated on that one piece of the puzzle that we've missed other possibilities?
That's a really interesting perspective. Are you suggesting there might be more to the story than a lone gunman firing from the sixth floor?
I think it's a possibility we can't afford to ignore. As we've discussed, there are inconsistencies and unanswered questions surrounding Oswald's location at the time of the shooting. What if his role, whatever it may have been, unfolded somewhere else within the Texas School Book Depository?
Oh, I see what you're getting at. If we step back and look at the entire building as a potential crime scene, rather than just focusing on the sixth floor, we might uncover new insights or connections that were previously overlooked.
Precisely. It's like widening the lens of a camera to capture a broader view of the scene. This shift in perspective could be crucial to understanding the events of that day.
So instead of being confined to the limited narrative of a lone gunman firing from a single location, we're opening ourselves up to the possibility of a more complex scenario, potentially involving multiple individuals and actions happening throughout building.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like we're piecing together a jigsaw puzzle. We can't just focus on one section. We need to consider all the pieces and how they fit together to create the bigger picture.
And that's what makes this deep dive so compelling. It's not about presenting definitive answers, but rather exploring different perspectives and challenging the assumptions we might have about this event.
Absolutely. It's about asking difficult questions, considering all the available evidence, and remaining open to the possibility that the truth might be more nuanced and intricate than we initially thought.
This deep dive has certainly been a whirlwind of information, and I have to admit I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. We've uncovered so many inconsistencies, conflicting accounts, and strange coincidences that it's starting to feel like a hall of mirrors.
I think that's a very apt analogy. The JFK assassination is a historical puzzle with countless moving parts, and it seems like every time we think we're close to a solution, we discover another layer of complexity.
So where do we go from here? What are the key takeaways from all of this? What should our listeners keep in mind as they continue to explore this event?
I think the most important takeaway is that there's no easy answer when it comes to the JFK assassination. The official narrative, while seemingly straightforward, is riddled with holes and unanswered questions.
So we shouldn't just accept the Warren Commission's conclusion that Oswald acted alone.
I wouldn't say that the Warren Commission's report is a valuable historical document, but it's crucial to approach it with a critical eye, considering all the evidence both supporting and conflicting.
And that's precisely what we've tried to do today. We've explored alternative theories, examined photographic and testimonial evidence, and even delved into the strange coincidences surrounding the man in the doorway and the enigmatic John Martin.
We've tried to demonstrate the importance of looking beyond the surface and considering the possibility that the truth might be far more complex than it initially appears.
Out of all the information we've covered today, what stands out to you as the most compelling piece of the puzzle?
For me, it's the sheer number of inconsistencies and unanswered questions surrounding the official narrative. The conflicting witness accounts about Lovelady's whereabouts and entire the doubts about Oswald's location at the time of the shooting, the recurring motif of the open shirt, the John Martin connection. All these details suggest there might be more to the story than meets the eye.
You're right. It's hard to dismiss all of these inconsistencies as mere coincidence. It feels like there's a deliberate attempt to obscure the truth. But the question remains, by whom and for what purpose?
Those are the questions that continue to fuel the fascination with this case. And while we may never have definitive answers, the pursuit of truth and the exploration of different perspectives are valuable in themselves.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the ultimate question that has likely been on our listeners' mind throughout this entire deep dive. Should we believe that Oswald was a lone gunman, a patsy, or something else entirely? What are your final thoughts on this?
I think the best we can do is remain open to all possibilities, continue to research, and ask difficult questions. The JFK assassination is a complex event with no easy answers, and it's up to each of us as critical thinkers to examine the evidence and draw our own conclusions.
Well said. This deep dive has been a wild ride, and it's definitely left me with more questions than answers. But that's the beauty of it all, isn't it? It's the pursuit of knowledge, the exploration of different perspectives, and the ongoing quest for truth that make this case so endlessly fascinating.
I completely agree. The JFK assassination is a stark reminder that history is not always as clear-cut as it might seem in textbooks. There are often layers upon layers of complexity, and it's our responsibility to delve into those layers, to question, to analyze, and to seek understanding.
This deep dive has certainly challenged some of the assumptions I had about this historical event, and I hope it's done the same for our listeners.
And if this exploration has left you wanting more, I encourage you to check out the show notes for links to the source material we've discussed today. There's a wealth of information out there waiting to be discovered.
So to our listeners, I encourage you to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those deep dives going.
And never stop learning.
Yeah, it really makes you think twice about just taking things at face value.
Right.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Yeah, and that's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just spark curiosity, encourage critical thinking, and
Yeah.
maybe even inspire further investigation.
Right.
The JFK assassination is a case that will probably continue to be debated for, generations to come.
No doubt about it. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the mystery of the man in the doorway, What final thoughts would you leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that history is rarely black and white,
Yeah.
especially when dealing with an event as complex and controversial as the JFK assassination.
Mm.
There are always multiple perspectives, hidden details, and unanswered questions.
Yeah.
You know, it's up to all of us to kind of sift through the evidence, weigh the different viewpoints, and ultimately form our own conclusions.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
This has been a really enlightening journey through such a pivotal moment in history.
it has been.
And for anyone who's been really captivated by this deep dive, I highly recommend checking out the show notes for links to the source material,
Oh, yeah.
including The Man in the Doorway,
Mhm.
an unbelievable coincidence article from the Fourth Decade Journal.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a great place to start for anyone who wants to delve deeper into the mystery surrounding the JFK assassination.
Absolutely.
And as always, we encourage you to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those deep dives going.
Until next time, stay curious.